So I was looking back in my TikTok memories thing, and I realized that it has been 3 years since I had top surgery. 4 years since I've been out as a man and started taking hormones. And I've started thinking a lot lately about who I am and who I was. And recently was National Coming Out Day too. And I realized that my coming out story is not... I don't think it's typical. Maybe it is. Maybe people just don't talk about it as much. There was never a point in my life where I hid in the closet out of fear. Now, that doesn't mean that I, thought my parents would be accepting. I've just always sort of been unclosetable. I came out as bisexual when I was 12 years old. The second I figured it out, I came out. Because I figured I had already been running away. I figured if I came out and my parents kicked me out, okay. I'd already been trying to fucking leave, and they didn't kick me out. They were real weird, though. Dad was unhappy, but that's because he had his own shit going on. And Mom literally just pretended I didn't say anything. Like, she simply did not respond, which was bizarre. And for all I know, she continues to stay in this state of denial, despite the fact that I am now a man and married to a woman. So why did it take me until I was 28 years old to come out as trans? Because for me, personally, fear was never an issue. And for some people it is. This is not to say that I am morally superior or braver than you or anything like that. Plenty of people have plenty of legitimate reasons to be afraid of coming out. But for me, it was just sort of a non-option. And I was always willing to take whatever came to me. Because the suffering of not coming out was always worse. So why did it take so long? It took so long because I legit didn't know it was a thing I could do. Had no idea for 28 fucking years. Now, don't get me wrong. I knew that, sex changes were a thing. But when I was growing up, they were kind of talked about in hushed tones. You would hear about, maybe on an episode of CSI, some sex worker who had a sex change and got murdered. Or, they were the butt of a joke in some comedy. But that was about it. And bless my grandmother. Because I remember asking about that when I was pretty young. And she was like, sometimes people are just born in the wrong body, and they will do anything they can to get the body they need. And it's just best to let people do that and not judge them. My grandmother was fantastic. She was the best of us. As for trans men, I didn't even know they existed until I was in my early to mid 20s. And even then I was like, oh, okay, so this is the thing you do when you're the most lesbian, right? Because, I had never met, trans lesbians either. Trans women who loved other women. Even when I lived in New York, the vast majority of trans women I hung around with were trans women who were attracted to men. So I didn't transition because I literally did not know it was a thing I could do. I didn't understand that gender and sexuality were not intrinsically entwined. And then once I realized that, I had to go through the long process of understanding that I was indeed in that category. Because I was like, I'm not terribly masculine. I like makeup. I like looking fancy. And all the trans men that I had really seen were these gym guys. They were sports boys who did sports. Surely it was completely unheard of to transform into a whimsical bow tie man. Now 90% of us are whimsical bow tie men. And I'm convinced that during the pandemic, when we were all stuck in the house, we all just sit there and at one point had an epiphany oh fuck, I can be a whimsical bow tie man. This is a thought that probably would not have occurred to me had I not had to be completely alone with my thoughts. My whole life, I thought I was just miserable. And I would date men who I wanted to be. Men who I saw as having unfulfilled potential. And that by fulfilling their potential, I could give my own life meaning. I could never see myself as the main character because I was completely disconnected from my own body. And it wasn't fair to me or the men that I was dating. Also, as it turns out, none of them actually had untapped potential. Those men were all living up to exactly the potential they had. But yeah, I'm really glad that now young people have the ability to figure this stuff out earlier, to understand these concepts earlier, because it would have saved me a whole lot of misery. And I think we need to talk about that more. We talk a lot about the fact that people don't come out of the closet because they're afraid, but what if you're not actually afraid? What if you don't have access to the information you need? And that's why a lot of this legislation around trans youth is so disturbing. Because while I don't regret the life that I've led, I'm happy at the point that I'm at, it would have saved me and a lot of the people around me, frankly, a lot of unnecessary suffering had I just known that from a younger age.